How's it going, everyone? And welcome back to the Calling Las Vegas. My name is Kel, also known as Red Zone Rogue, and today I am joined by DM Armada here.
How's it going?
It's fantastic. How are you doing today?
I can't believe that I missed a round 2 Charge Bolton game. I can't believe it.
It was spectacular, too.
Oh my goodness. I love Charge Bolton. People, Charge Bolton is legit. It is so much fun to play, and it can push up just a bunch of damage. And I think that's what you saw in round 2. Is that correct?
Oh, for sure. It pushed a lot of damage through. Just a lot of consistent damage, too.
That's exactly what he does. I mean, that's the goal of a Charge Bolton deck, is to charge and then push consistent damage and then free damage off of the Raiden and give that go again, and then more damage after that. It's a fantastic way to play Bolton. One of 2 fantastic ways to play Bolton. And I'm kind of sad I missed it. I'm not going to lie.
You missed a good game, man. You missed a really good game.
But that's okay, because in this round, we have something very interesting that we haven't had before on stream. I think for round 3, I believe we have a Chane versus Chane mirror.
Yeah, it looks like we have a mirror match coming up.
And one of the players I know very personally, who's a fantastic player, you may know him as well. I think we have Brendan Patrick on stream of Arsenal Pass fame. Brendan's Chane list is incredibly practiced, planned out, very consistent. He's been playing Chane since literally before Chane released. After they were spoiling, I'm pretty sure he started testing Chane, and they've been on the Chane train ever since. And so it's a very refined list. A lot of people have looked at lists that he and his team have put out and tested, and I think they very much feel like the team to beat in a way.
Yeah, I really feel that Brendan Patrick himself is one of the people you really want to pay attention to in this calling event.
That being said, comparing this list to our next list, you're going to see a few little differences, a couple of little things. I do want to point out that the triple vexing malice here is something we see fairly often. We also see in this list the dimensional crossroads included, the yellow dimensional crossroads, which I don't know if they'll get cited in this matchup, because this is definitely a very aggressive matchup in a lot of respects. When you're playing Chane versus Chane, it's oftentimes going to come down to how each person's shackles are triggering and what things are being banished. And it's also how much early pressure someone can put on and kind of take things away from the other Chane player. It's a very interesting matchup, one that some people call coin flippy, and other people often think it's more nuanced than it is. I'm in the nuanced category. I don't know if you've ever played the Chane v Chane matchup. What are your
I have
thoughts?
a couple times, yeah. I agree with you. It really comes down to tempo. Not exactly a coin flip, but just being able to get some early advantage and some tempo can go a long way.
Yeah, and it really is a lot of the banished triggers. Whatever gets banished for the player. If we see one of these 2 players on Shackle 4 banish like Seeds, Riftbind, and then just decide to hold and wait, and then we see the other player banish like Enlightened Strike, Command and Conquer, and Art of War, things could get very disgusting very quickly for each of those players in those respects, because those are the absolute opposite banishes that you want. And it's going to be very interesting to see what we actually see this game unfold as, because the banishes really do end up mattering a whole ton. Though it's interesting too, I do want to say that some Chane decks don't really end up caring a lot about what you end up banishing, because they can push so much damage from hand.
Yeah, it just has raw damage.
Yeah, things like Command and Conquer, or play a non-attack action card and just attack with Nebula Blade so that you can push 4 damage and Rune Chant.
Something simple as just like a attack that with Go Again from your Chane activation followed up by Command and Conquer. Something as simple as that can push a lot of damage through and create a huge threat for your opponent.
Yeah. What are some other cards in this matchup, or really in general in Chane, that you love to see played, or that you feel the players are very much going to want to favor in a matchup like a mirror? Do you have any that come to mind? I know for me, Plunder Run is like on the top of that list.
Plunder Run's fantastic. Just the card advantage, like the raw card advantage that you get from it is absolutely fantastic. And it really contributes to that tempo advantage that you can get. Just having access to more resources. That really, it comes down to that. Having access to more resources, whether in your banish zone or whether in your hand Just resources in general are going to be fantastic for Chane, and
Yeah.
it's really going to come down to that in this match.
Yeah.
Just raw resources and an advantage.
If one of these players can get a plunder run into Arsenal consistently and then activate that plunder run from Arsenal, again, things can just get very, very crazy. So let's bounce over to the game and see how this unfolds. I'm looking very much forward to this. Into round 3 we go. We have Brendan Patrick versus James Kandziolka. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, but I did my best.
I think you did a fantastic job.
I have a strange last name, so I really feel for people with the pronunciations of names. I hope I nailed it.
Looking right off the bat like a true mirror match. Exact same equipment loadout, exact same hero and weapon. Starting off by generating a rune chant off of the Grasp of the Arcanite there.
I love going first in Chane matchups because you get to just do a free reset of your hand, basically. Create a rune chant token using Grasp of the Arcanite, pitching away cards you want to see later, and that's exactly what we saw. Saw a red Riftbind pitched away along with another red card, saving those cards for later down the line when they're going to matter more.
I agree. And they really are going to matter here, especially if it goes to the long game. And those are fantastic cards to get in the late game.
Definitely. Ooh, we have a Shadow Puppetry coming down.
Shadow Puppetry, absolutely fantastic card. +1 and go again on the next attack, followed by an Enlightened Strike.
Oh,
very,
man.
very spicy play here.
Of course, tucking a card from the Enlightened Strike effect, I'm sure he's just weighing out which card he wants to tuck. Enlightened Strike requires you, even though it costs nothing, it requires you to tuck a card to the bottom of your deck. I'm assuming that he's probably attacking for the 7, and then with the go again and with the +1 makes this attack for 8 and go again.
It's a pretty threatening attack just right off the bat.
I want to point this out. We see James playing Reaping Blade.
Oh, I didn't see the Reaping Blade.
Do you notice the Reaping Blade? Reaping Blade, for anyone at home that doesn't know Reaping Blade is not the traditional weapon that is played. Reaping Blade prevents the opponent from gaining life if they are at less or if they are at more life, which is very non-traditional. It's also great that it can just pay 1 and attack for 3.
Yeah, just a unconditional 1 cost coming for 3, which is not too bad.
No, it really isn't too bad, but it's very interesting that he's playing that into the mirror. I wonder if he's doing that because of this desire to worry about like life gain. I'm not sure.
We have
double block.
So we followed it up with a Scar for a Scar.
Yeah, it's interesting. You don't see Scar for a Scar played much in Chane as well. So there's 2 very interesting things going here, which leads us to believe this may not be a very traditional Chane matchup or Chane-built deck.
So here we have a Seeds of Agony in the Banner Zone from Brendan Patrick here.
Playing the Plunder Run down, followed by Command and Conquer, threatening to absolutely destroy the Arsenal zone of James. Also sending a Rune Chant over as well.
And pitching that Shout of Ursa is actually something to note. If it goes long game, having that late is going to be fantastic.
Mm-hmm. I don't know how long the game will go, but based on taking a look at James' list, it might be that he's trying to play for a longer game. This does appear that he is running the 3 flock of the Featherwalkers that have become pretty common in Chane, both in perhaps he's running them both in red and yellow as well, which could be very interesting.
Would be interesting.
So how to deal with the Command and Conquer? Looks like he's not dealing with the Rune Chant, taking that point.
It's a pretty significant threat here, threatening to draw a card and destroy the card in his arsenal. Blocking it all out.
So here he blocks the full amount because Plunder Run is threatening 1 extra damage. I think it came from Arsenal, so it was a blue Plunder Run providing a 1 buff on there, which makes a 7's just an awkward breakpoint, right?
It is. There's a lot of really key breakpoints in Flesh and Blood. 4 and 7 are 2 of the most common ones.
Yeah,
and
because
getting that 7's really threatening.
6 usually comes across that you're just basically saying, take 2 cards from your hand, throw this down there, because most cards block for 3. But 7, that's where things get very interesting.
Ooh, here we have, like we said, coming in with that Reaping Blade. Just for a single damage, or a single 3 attack.
It's interesting. Threatening 3, he made the Soul Shackle on it, I would imagine. That's why we went to 2 here. And, he's going to play his own Command and Conquer.
Yeah, Command and Conquer's back and forth.
It's interesting, though, because this one has a lot less utility. There is nothing in Brendan's arsenal, so he could just look at this as pure 6 damage.
Yeah, it's not threatening to draw a card from a Plunder Run.
That's right. So how to decide for Brendan what he's going to do in this scenario. You could just say, that's fine, I'm going to take 6. You could double block because you don't need the cards in your hand.
We are seeing that double block.
Double block because he doesn't need cards. One of those is a seed, so he is going to leak a point of damage, but he doesn't care because there's no arsenal to destroy. Yeah. Banishing an invert, a seeds, and a bounding. Those are 3
pretty good hits.
Fantastic hits. Those are great.
As a Chane player, you love to see it.
You love to see it. That's correct.
Looks like he's going to start off with the Seeds of Agony. Picking up his Soul Shackles and then coming in with a Bounding Demagon.
This is a bounding for 4 because it came from Banish. It's also threatening a point of Arcane. And we have the go again off of the creation of a Soul Shackle. I think he still has 2 cards in hand. It's crazy because he doesn't have to do anything with the cards in hand up until this point because of those great banishes.
Yeah, the Banish Zone almost acts like a second hand for Chane in these kind of situations. And here we see a Nebula Blade coming in, pitching another Invert Existence to play it. Since he did play a non-attack action, it's coming in for 4 damage here.
4 and a Rune Chant. And that's a great break point to attack a second time in a row, especially because Fate Foreseen was played the first time. So now you know they don't have, a Fate Foreseen most likely in their hand again to block the 4.
And like we were saying, that 4 breakpoint's really, really important. Most cards only block for 3 maximum unless you incorporate equipment or defense reactions.
Oh, and look, at the end of the turn, he's going to come in with the Invert Existence. He's going to banish a non-attack Seeds and an attack. I don't know if he actually banished the Seeds, if he gave him that or not. Nevertheless, he's banned. Oh, it looks like it was the Shadow Puppetry, perhaps. Dealing 2 arcane damage at the end of your turn before your opponent refills and has the ability to block it. But he doesn't even have Arcane Barrier unless he's got lower life, and then he's got Arcane Barrier 3 off the Skull Cap.
With that, we have a tied game, 32-all. Brendan getting that tempo back and showing him that his deck is a force to be reckoned with.
So rifling through the cards in hand, got the full grip, of course. See what he chooses to do. Or perhaps he has 3 cards. I'm not sure if he has 3 cards. It'd be nicer to see the banishes off the top there. I'm not sure what specifically was banished, but it looks like it's not much. Perhaps he's playing an Art of War at this time. Looks like there's an Art of War there on the top of the screen.
I think so. That is one card you definitely do not want to see banished.
No.
Probably the last card you want to see because of how fantastic it is.
Oh, no, it was a Shadow Averser.
Shadow Averser, also a fantastic card. Has the option to banish a card from his hand. If he does, it gets go again.
Yeah, if he's banishing a Blood Debt card, he gets to go again off the Shadow, and most likely is going to play that thing from banished. It's a fantastic card for setting up your future turns, for putting cards that you don't want in your hand into the banished zone so that you can play it.
Looks like Brendan took 2 from the Shadow of Ursa. We have a Shadow Puppetry coming in with another Bounding Demagon with go again.
Blocks it up. And that Bounding Demagon is not from the banished zone, so it wouldn't be coming across for the extra point. But it does have go again based on that Shadow Puppetry. So he does threaten some more stuff. Saved the Soul Shackle for this exact moment. I wonder what he's going to play from hand for the Soul Shackle.
Forcing Brendan to block with his equipment should not be understated. Getting early blocks with the equipment is a pretty big deal.
That is very true.
See how James follows this up.
Going to pitch a Fate Foreseen. But he can come across with, yes, an Unhallowed Rites. Now, this is going to go through the discard pile and fetch him a non-attack action card. Unfortunately for him, it would appear that he does not have a non-attack action card to actually go and put at the bottom of the deck.
That is a sad day.
But it's still threatening damage, and it looks like the cards in Brendan's hand are more important to him than 4 life. So he gambled the 4 life away so that he could play whatever he has in his hand.
Got a Seeds of Agony and an Unhallowed Rites. Unhallowed Rites could be played from Banish Zone if you have played a non-attack action this turn.
Which is good because he has a Seeds to play, right?
Yeah.
So he will be able to play that out of his Banish Zone. And don't forget, he is also threatening the 1 Rune Chant damage because that rune chant was created last turn by the Nebula Blade.
Yeah, and all of this arcane damage is essentially unblockable because he has that lower life. The Arcanite Skullcap for James is not turned on.
Yeah, and oftentimes you're never going to pitch to trigger that against, like one rune chant anyway, right? Unless it's late game, you're at 1 life or something like that. He's going to play his own Unhallowed Rites, go and fetch a Seeds, finds the Seeds from discard, pops that to the bottom of the deck. Coming across for 2 sources of Arcane, 2 different sources of Arcane, and the casual 4 with the go again off the Soul Shackle.
Seeds of Agony being one of the best cards to choose for Unhallowed Rites, wouldn't you say?
I think it's the #1 choice. There's oftentimes nothing better that you can go and fetch that has Blood Debt that's a non-attack, and Seeds is just literally perfect in that regard. Put it at the bottom of your deck, you wait till the end of the game, you banish them all, and you throw them at your opponent.
Coming in with a Nebula Blade that is powered up because he did play a non-attack action here, so coming in for 4, threatening another Rune Chant token on hit.
Yeah. This is oftentimes what I've seen Brendan do with his deck is, as much as he possibly can, threaten the Nebula Blade each turn because it attacks the breakpoint so heavily, and because it creates a Rune Chant, which can further attack players that don't have a valuable source of blocking arcane damage.
It's such an efficient card. See how much James wants to commit to blocking this. Looks like it has 2 cards from hand to block so far. And it will require at least 2 cards in hand to block it all out to prevent that Rune Chant creation.
Yeah, either that or he takes the second block on the not the Arcanite Skullcap, the Grasp of the Arcanite. You could take that block easily. You could use the Arcanite Skullcap to prevent the 4, and he does end up double blocking with cards from hand. Looks like one of them was a Seed, so blocked for 2, and then whatever the other card ended up being more than blocked it. He arsenals and passes on over. 3 banishes. Oh, hits a Shadow Puppetry and a Flock, and that's a blue Flock.
They're not what you really want to see off of your Soul Shackle triggers.
No, it is not. You'd rather be playing those Flocks early and often than you would banish them, of course.
Looks like we have a Chane activation, creating another Soul Shackle. Pitching an Invert Existence, just coming in with that Reaping Blade for 3.
It's so interesting because the Reaping Blade does some similar stuff. It doesn't provide that same level of pressure that attacking for 4 does, but you also don't have to set it up to attack for 4, right? Because if you don't have a Nebula Blade...
This is a very interesting card.
Yeah, this has been recently added more and more to lists. The Tremors of Raphael, which basically just allow, if you've dealt arcane damage, more threatening attacks. In this instance, he hasn't dealt arcane damage, and so this is really just coming across for 4, if my memory serves correctly.
See how Brendan chooses to respond to this card.
It's also an interesting decision because you can keep cards in your hand, and you can filter your own life down. But the further you filter it, the more you enter into this moment where I have to use Carrion Husk, otherwise it explodes because my life is too low. But my opponent's not presenting the threat that I want to Carrion Husk at the time. So if Brendan chooses to take this in this moment, he's put himself that much closer to having to use the Carrion Husk for any sort of value whatsoever. And there are some very tricky things that you can do, really as any class, to remove those Carrion Husks from Chane players when they get a little too greedy. And so it's going to be interesting to see if he chooses to just take 4 and have the turn go onto his side of things and play out whatever cards he has in his hand plus whatever gets banished, or if he chooses to kind of block some of this damage, filter 2 cards out of his hand perhaps. Maybe he only takes 1, blocks 3 and takes 1 damage.
That could be the case. It's really tricky. You really don't want to block too early with Carrion Husk and start taking that Blood Debt every single turn.
Yep. This would have been a far more scary attack if he had met the banish trigger. Or I guess technically, is this the one that gets +2 if banished? Oh, it is. Yes,
yeah.
That's correct. I flipped it around, everybody. My apologies. So this is actually coming in for 6. So it is threatening a lot more than I originally led to. He's going to use a block on the Arcanite Skullcap and just take the damage.
Taking him down to 17. Isn't insignificant amount. We have 17 versus 25 here.
Oh no, we have a banish of a Shadow Puppetry and the Art of War coming out.
He had to get at least 2 Seeds of Agony, which is still pretty good.
Yeah, I think the 1 seed was there, and then he banished a 2nd seed, and now we have Rip Through Reality active. And he's going to play an Art of War from hand. So this is another reason why he was sitting there thinking if he wanted to take a bunch of damage or use cards from hand, because he had an Art of War turn planned. So pitching, banishing the Ghostly Visit that can attack for 4 and drawing 2 cards. Looks like he's choosing Go again because he didn't put a die on the Art of War to indicate +1.
Like he's popping off both of those Seeds of Agony.
Yeah. This is good, too, because you want the Soul Shackle trigger to give Go again a Ghostly Visit. And you want the 2 points of Arcane to hit, or any point of Arcane to hit, so that the Rip Through Reality has Go again. And it is most likely going to hit because James is at 25. More life, can't stop Arcane. So it's going to be a big turn.
Yeah, it looks like Brendan's really, really setting up for a huge turn. Ooh, Shadow of Ursa.
What is he banishing? He's banishing another Seeds.
And another Seeds.
I wonder if he elected to go +1 here. I'd be very curious because this is going to be a big turn if this is +1.
Seeing how he's following up the Art of War with an attack that has Go again.
Yeah, and he gave it Go again. You're right. It probably is +1. So if we're assuming this is +1, this Shadow of Ursa is attacking for 3.
It's a very scary turn coming in from Brendan Patrick.
So he blocks 3 with his red Riftbind. Not a card you technically want to lose, but when it's in your hand, you don't value it as much. Seeds of Agony into Rip Through Reality with Go again. As you can see, he took the 2 points of Arcane, so he's down at 23. So Rip Through Reality has Go again. Still a card in hand. Still a card in Arsenal.
As James, you got to be looking at the cards in his Banish Zone, card in Arsenal, card in hand, and you're just thinking, man, it's going to keep coming.
I am very interested to see what plays out. This feels like one of those turns where you can pitch and play from Arsenal like, he's gonna Shackle. Come in with the Nebula Blade.
Oh, here we have that Nebula Blade.
So being conservative. I was going to say something like Command and Conquer from Arsenal to really just like pop that off can be really, really disgusting. But nevertheless, attacking with Nebula Blade, threatening that Rune Chant for the last attack.
Yeah. Once again, that 4 breakpoint. Ooh, forcing the Carrion Husk.
This is a good time, I think, to use the Carrion Husk. It stops the Rune Chant. You know you're going to take more damage after this, or you're basically just surrendering your hand. So
I think Brendan's really happy to see that, too. Then obviously following that up with a Ghostly Visit.
Most likely for 5.
Yep.
And
down to 12.
Cleanup. I love, and this is something that some players do and some players don't do when they play Chane. I personally love how clean Brendan Patrick removes his Banished Zone each turn so that he doesn't have to worry about Errant Blood Debt just popping him for something unforeseen.
So it looked like James did hit a few playable cards off of his Soul Shackle triggers.
Yes, indeed, and it looks like that Vexing should probably be just in the Banished, unless he played that Vexing. I don't
It was one of the cards that was banished.
That's what I thought.
And there we go, back into the Banished Zone.
So a couple of things that can perhaps provide his own amount of like big turn moment.
Yeah, let's see if James can get that tempo back and come back in. Starting off with a Scar for Scar, which will have Go again because he has less life. Makes a lot of sense.
Attacking that 4 break point. And again, this is just what this deck does. It just looks and says, hey, there's a fundamental break here where cards block 3 and all of these other cards that we have access to, whether by a buff from their own hand or their own effect or just by nature of it being printed on the card, they are 4 attacks. And so every time one of these comes down, you have to make a decision if you're going to take the damage, and then they just bleed you.
Yeah. And it's all of these little decisions really add up.
Oh, man, here we go with the Enlightened Strike coming in, tucking a card, and he chooses the draw card effect.
Very interesting.
So coming in for 5, and this is a perfect Husk moment. You can see Brendan's at 13. This
Basically
is the
have to block with it here.
Got to use it for something, and might as well use it to block 5.
Carrion Husk obviously blocking for 6, so it blocks the entire attack here. Let's see what James can do to follow it up. Still has a card in hand.
I don't believe, did he give this Go again with Snapdragon Scalers just now? Yes,
he did.
So this does
Snapdragon
have
Scalers
go
have been popped. Card in Arsenal, card in hand. Ooh, Maverian Skies.
another go again trigger, and now he's playing from Banished. See what he plays down. He's playing a Bounding for 4. Because of the effect coming from Banished, it now attacks for 4.
And it's also threatening a Rune Chant off the back of the Maverian Skies.
Very good point, yeah. If it hits, creates a Rune Chant off of Maverian, and it has go again already. He hasn't had to use the Shackle at all.
So James looks like looking to still have a little bit of gas here.
Yeah, definitely. He's got what looks like 3 cards in Banish that he can still play from.
Yeah. Card in Arsenal. Brendan looking to see how many cards he wants to commit to blocking here.
It's such an interesting matchup, too, because it's also very dependent upon what gets banished over the next 1 or 2 turns. Because at this point, with the life totals being 13 and 12 apiece, this game isn't going for too many more turns.
For sure.
So,
as the Chane player, for either Brendan or James, what cards do you really want to see hit off those banish triggers?
no, it's always Seeds. It's always Seeds and Bounding, Rift Binds if you can handle it. Those sorts of things.
Blocking with a fantastic card here with Shadow Puppetry and with one of his equipment pieces.
I believe that leaks 1 in that scenario. No, the 2 plus the 2 makes 4. Yep, blocks it all the way out.
Following it up with another Bounding, which is coming in.
And this is again with go again because he made a Soul Shackle into yellow Bounding for 3.
Here we see another example of just how strong Chane is. Ooh, Shadow of Ursa.
And it looks like he's probably going to end up taking that too as well. It's at the point now where Brendan just says, you know what, whatever you're going to throw at me, I'm going to take that damage. I need these 2 cards in my hand because I need to be able to pay for what I banish. Oh, you never want to see banishing Soul Reaping. That is like, if you can play a Soul Reaping, you are having a good game. So banishing that is not fun.
Next to Art of War, it's got to be the worst card to banish.
I could see that, yeah.
Did get at least a couple cards. We have a Riftbind here and an Unhallowed Rites. Operating with almost a full hand.
Well, I think he has a 2-card hand, or is it a 3?
Hand? Card in Arsenal still.
Looks like he only had to spend blocking with 1 card last turn, so he's playing a Red Seeds. This is a fine turn to play that Unhallowed Rites so that you can cycle that Seeds you just played.
I think that's a good call. Taking up the Soul Shackles here.
Yep, up to 6 now. Gonna just go for the 4, pitching a blue Whisper of the Oracle. A card that has seen a lot more play lately, allowing you to opt. If you play it, just pitch it, and it blocks 3. I think that's a highly underrated card.
I think you're right. So this Reaping Blade is coming in for 4, threatening 1 arcane damage from the Seeds of Agony and Rune Chant off the back end.
Well, I don't believe it pops the Seeds because Seeds looking for an attack
that is
action.
true.
But it is still threatening the arcane or
off
the
next
Rune Chant creation.
Yeah. And
it is floating out there, allowing you to play something like an Unhallowed Rites. Looks like he took that damage, just takes the 4, and this is going to send. This is a really powerful turn, allowing that just take 4 moment, because now you're looking at 4 damage physical, 2 different sources of 1 arcane that you cannot pitch really well to defend, because the only way you can is with the blue pitch off the Arcanite Skullcap.
Every point of arcane damage here is going to be a big deal, especially when you're at 4 now.
Which is why we see, I think, Brendan choosing to threaten the Nebula Blade first.
Yeah.
On the chance of taking that, arcane damage and just throwing it on over there. He is going to pitch, and he's going to block, excuse me. Blocking out that 4. Snapdragoning. Oh my
Enlightened
goodness.
Strike.
I would imagine that's Enlightened for 7.
I think that's a really good bet.
Enlighten a strike for 7.
That's huge.
And the smart thing here, too, is that he's choosing not to break the combat chain so that you can't get another block in with your Arcanite Skullcap. He played that immediately after, so the Skullcaps are basically just locked in Unhallowed Rites.
James is in a really tough situation here. Only a couple cards in hand to block with, 1 equipment left. It's really down to the wire. Blocking with both cards.
And a Trimmer's going to block for 2, and a Seed's going to block for 2. And the last block on the skull, or on the Grasp of the Arcanite, is going to soak up a little. He goes down to 2 damage, though. 2 health left. This is a very scary place to be if your opponent can create arcane damage.
Yeah. You got to be sweating here if you're James. Really, really rough.
The banishes matter a ton.
Oh, only hitting 2.
No.
Invert Existence and what was the other card?
It looked like it was a Seeds.
Seeds of Agony?
Yeah, it looked like it was a Seeds. This is a very scary moment.
I mean, Invert Existence can deal 2 arcane damage, so it shouldn't be counted out here.
Oh, most definitely. No, you're right.
Brendan being only at 6.
Now, we can also think about this from Brendan's perspective. If he has an Invertent Existence in his hand, we saw one of them played early. We saw one of them pitched early. So there should be one floating in the deck unless he only runs 2. And this is exactly what James is having to think about as well, because you have to keep cards to pitch to block that, 2 points of arcane at this point.
Coming in for a Riftbind here. On a very, very crucial turn. Blocking with the Grasp of the Arknight and a Ghostly Visit.
And it looks like he takes the point of arcane as well.
Yeah.
From this.
Here we have a Reaping Blade coming in for 3.
The old pay 1, attack for 3.
Yep.
Definitely feels different than a Nebula Blade, though, right?
For sure. Doesn't have that crucial breakpoint here. Blocking with the Seeds.
So it does leak a point of damage.
It does. And also gets a Seeds of Agony out of Brendan's hand.
At this point.
Here we have the Invert Existence. Taking Brendan's discard pile, looking for some hits for that.
It's perfect timing, too, because I was going to say at this point you do have to worry about cards in your own hand to pitch to activate any of those arcane barriers. And unfortunately for Brendan, he can't stop this 2 points of damage because he is at 4, which is more, and Skullcap's arcane barrier is not active. So now they're tied. Now neither player can stop arcane damage.
This is really,
and it just comes down to this.
Really exciting. Really down to the wire.
Both players, by the way, have Carrion Husk in their banished. So it's literally to the point now, if either player can't clear their banished zone, they're probably dead.
This is some really good hits from Brendan here.
I forgot to mention the point of Blood Debt does actually put James one life lower.
We are on a couple turn countdown. We have a Riftbind, Shadow of Ursa, Bounding Demagon, and another Riftbind.
It is basically this. It's basically down to this. One of these players will probably die this turn.
Yeah, exactly.
Either to Blood Debt or to just too much attack.
The absolute pivotal turn of this game.
Is he looking? He's looking to play from hand. Very interesting.
Ooh, got a Shadow Puppetry, playing that Bounding Demagon.
That's coming in for 5 too.
5 with Go Again. Fantastic.
With Go Again. If it hits, win the game.
Basically.
If it hits, win the game.
Anything at all now that hits will basically win the game for Brendan.
Oh, did he pitch to play Invert Existence? Oh, he did. He pitches to play Invert Existence on Brendan's turn. Brendan can't do anything to stop it.
Wow.
And picks up the win off the back of Invert Existence to deal 2 arcane damage. What a way to finish the game. Oh,
what a
my
game.
Goodness.
Absolutely down to the wire.
What a crazy finish to a mirror match. The first mirror match that we've seen on the stream. A very interesting back and forth. What did you think about that?
I think it was an absolutely fantastic game. Especially like the 2 Chane decks were different enough that we saw different things coming out of both of them. And even though it was that different, they both got right down to the last couple life points.
Yeah, that's oftentimes how those matchups play out when it's that mirror match between Chane. It's you're both bleeding your damage so fast. You're both just allowing certain things to happen. It's very, very crazy back and forth. But we do have, it sounds like we do have a match to watch in the meantime. It sounds like we have a second match, and it looks like one of those players is playing Prism. Let's take a look at the Prism deck. So what do you see? When you look at this, what jumps out to you immediately? To me, this seems like, looking at it, a very standard Prism deck list.
Yeah, basically, you want to look at the word Herald. All of the Heralds are big, scary angels. Just at a glance, you see all of these Herald of Protections, Triumphs, both in red, yellow, and blue.
I do want to point this out. I love the inclusion of 3 yellow Plunder runs. This is something that I started doing recently in Prism as well, is including 3 yellow Plunder runs. Plunder run is so good that it is worth running in just about every single deck in the game. And it does look like Prism is up against another Chane player. So it looks like Sarah's Chane list. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Sarah Chane list as well. Oftentimes, it's a lot of the stuff that we've seen in the previous couple of games.
I immediately spot an Eye of Ophidia in this Chane list, which is pretty uncommon.
It is very fun. I like that. And 2 Ninth Blade of the Blood Oaths, most likely to side in against exactly what we're seeing right here in Prism. Because again, Prism is one of those heroes that can throw heralds at you like crazy. Giant attacks that are undercosted and overstatted. But they can be destroyed by your opponent based on the opponent's attacks powers. Right?
Yeah, Chane doesn't inherently have a lot of 6-attack cards to put in his deck anyway.
Yeah, so it can be a bit of an interesting back and forth. And so let's go ahead and jump in and see where they're at with this match and how it's played out up until this point, or if it's starting. I'm not sure.
Could be a very interesting match.
I love playing Chane and Prism. That combination, just that matchup, is a really fun one. A lot of because of what you just said. It looks like they are just kicking off now, which is great. The inability for Chane to really dedicate 6 attacks to popping heralds makes the back and forth very interesting.
I agree. I think it's going to be very, very crucial to see how many 6 attacks Chane can get. The heralds are going to be quite scary.
And oftentimes Chane's just so good that they just kind of deal with the damage. But if you have a crazy Tome of Divinity turn, and it looks like this list also had a couple of Tome of Fiendals. If you have a crazy Tome of Divinity turn as Prism, then you can do a lot of the things that Chane does, where they just go wider than you can deal with.
And when they're going wide, all of their attacks are coming in for 6, 7 damage.
Yep, so it ends up making the Chane player really think about what cards you hold in your hand. Because if you need to stop a Herald of Erudition turn, for example, then you need to sit on a Ninth Blade of the Blood Oath or a Soul Reaping and just not play it. And obviously you're not going to play the Ninth Blade anyway. Usually you're just holding that to pop that key turn. Oh, starting off really spicy, creating 3 Spectral Shield tokens.
Those tokens are not to be underestimated.
Most likely attacking with all 3 because all of them have Go Again. Thanks to Luminaris.
Yep. All of his aura attacks have Go Again, thanks to Luminaris, because of the yellow pitch card in the pitch zone. So they'll all come in for 1 damage, but every time they come in, you're going to have to either take the damage or commit a card.
Look at this. He's just going to commit all of his cards because, again, on first turn, if you're the second player, you draw up at the end of the first turn to mitigate some of that first turn advantage of attacking and blocking. And, and look at this. He's going to play down Pursuit of Knowledge.
Pretty spicy card.
It is a spicy card. Coming in for 4. If your opponent lets it hit, then your intellect goes to 5. Intellect in this game is your hand size. So you get 5 cards in your hand, which is so fun.
Drawing 5 cards on the back of turn 1 is a pretty good thing that you want to do here. They blocked with a Plunder Run. Looking like... Did it hit? I believe they blocked with the Arcanite Skullcap as well.
Yeah, I would imagine that you usually don't want to let that hit, right?
Yeah.
That is one of those things, especially on turn 1. On turn 1, you have the free and clear to just block it out with cards from your hand. In this case, he decided to block out with a card from hand and a Skullcap block.
Forcing an early Skullcap block is a pretty big deal here for the Prism player.
It is. It is an interesting choice.
It really makes those Dominate Angels that much better later in the game.
Yeah. So you see, we create a Soul Shackle right off the top. Let's see what we choose to play off of the Soul Shackle creation. Here comes in for 1, Soul Shackle for 1, up to 1, I should say. And oh, wow, interesting. Choosing to play the Soul Reaping and banishing Shadow Averser, giving him a resource. This card is like everything you want. It's everything in the kitchen sink.
It is a fantastic card. It's legendary for a reason, and I think it lives up to that moniker.
Looks like he's going to let it pop, and he's going to take the 3, take away the 3 Spectral Shields. Those soak 3 damage, and he ends up taking 3 damage off of the back of that.
Coming in with that Shadow of Ursa, banishing a card with Blood Debt, so it has Go Again.
Does indeed. And most likely probably going to keep the Seeping Shadows in his banished zone and save that up for a later turn.
I think it's a great card to save for later.
And this is a non-threatening attack. This is not coming across for much, and so oftentimes you let Shadow Reverser just deal its 2 and move right along.
Just coming in for 2, no on-hit effects.
And look at this,
Nice.
dropping a potion. Wow. The Time Snap potion comes down. That is very interesting.
I think it's going to be a really big deal in this Prism matchup. Like getting that extra action point off of popping spectral shields and that kind of stuff.
Oh, Spectra, yeah, popping Spectra, you're right. All right, let's see what the, it's Osvaldo. Let's see what Osvaldo has in store. Obviously, he's got some Heralds in hand, as we saw a moment ago. And it's always interesting because you do, in the back of your mind as a Prism player, you do just kind of worry about someone just popping it at the worst possible time. But here we have a Herald of Triumph coming in, and you cannot destroy a Herald of Triumph via the Phantasm keyword unless you're blocking with a 7 attack. And I can only think of one card that Chane has at his disposal, and that's Ninth Blade of the Blood Oath to actually destroy a Herald.
Osvaldo's basically saying here, do you have a Ninth Blade of the Blood Oath, or are you going to block with a lot more cards than you'd like to?
Yeah, and this one looks like it's yellow, so it's coming across for 6 with Go again because Genesis is pitched in the pitch zone. Prism is so much fun to play. I love playing just giant attacks. So he is blocking the card out. Oh, he's going to play down Herald of Protection. And Herald of Protection has the threat of creating a Spectral Shield if it hits. So you can come down with a Spectral Shield afterwards, and because all of these have Go again, you can attack them for 1 point after attacking for 6.
And also going into the soul if it hits, setting up for a potential bigger turn.
That's very true, yeah. It looks like he is going to let that hit, take 6, create a Spectral Shield, and then push the Spectral Shield damage, see if he wants to take a card there. Most likely you don't block out the Spectral Shield. If you let Herald of Protection hit, you're just saying, I'm going to take whatever you're going to throw at me.
Yeah. That's why the Spectral Shields really can't be underestimated. Just that one chip damage here and there is something that you really can't out.
Not a great banish. You want to see the Plunder run in your hand so then you can put it in your arsenal and then you can profit. You don't want to see it get banished because then you're just sad.
This is a very sad Chane turn. So far, at least.
So going into his turn, or excuse me, going into her turn, we have a couple of cards in hand still. We've got the possibility of giving something Go again with the yellow Seeping Shadows. Going to play down a Seeds of Agony blue, making a Soul Shackle off the back there. And then Nebula Blade for 4.
Yep, coming in, Nebula Blade for 4 with Go again.
Tried and true.
You love
it's
to see
what
it.
you do
You love to
as
see it.
Chane. Nebula Blade for 4.
And as we've talked already, coming in for 4 is a big deal. Forces at least 2 cards or a card and a piece of equipment. And as we see, Osvaldo doesn't have a lot of equipment that blocks very well.
No, interesting that he's playing the gloves. Because oftentimes, the Dreamweavers, you play into matchups that you have a lot of worry that they're going to be popping things, so you save it for like a Herald of Erudition turn towards the middle or the end of the game. In this matchup, you don't have as much worry as you would, but nevertheless, you can play it because you still save it for that big Herald of Erudition turn.
Herald of Erudition is just that powerful. Let's see, coming in with another really powerful Herald. This one coming in for 7.
Yep. Wartune Herald, cost 1, which allows you to pitch a yellow, float 1 resource, devote that to, either using the effect on Phantasmal Footsteps if they do end up destroying this Herald via the Phantasm keyword, or just paying for something down the line. You could kind of earmark that 1, pitch something else, and then banish something from Soul to create a Spectral Shield. And I think that's what they're talking about right now. In fact,
yeah.
Gesturing over to the Soul.
I think you're 100% right. And all these really powerful angels put Chane in a really tricky situation. Not having a ton of those 6 attack cards to really pop these angels,
It's a matchup that
Oh,
reminds
here we
me.
go.
Ooh, he did indeed pop it with the Command and Conquer.
One of the few cards that can do it in the Chane deck.
And let's see if he chooses to pay the resource and keep going. It looks like not. It looks like he's just going to be content with that being destroyed, taking the very powerful Command and Conquer from the opponent's hand. It's very interesting that you can choose to keep going. Oh, no.
Ooh, there's
banishing
one of those.
one of those cards that you desperately need.
Did not want to see that. They did hit an Unhallowed Rites, which is a card that could be played from the Banish Zone. It's not a total loss.
So this entire exchange it's very reminiscent of like the Bravo matchup from a Chane perspective, because you know Bravo is going to throw giant things at you, and they're going to have to pay for it by pitching usually a card or two, except in this instance you kind of have a little bit of counterplay, but they can also go way wider. So there's some similarities here in this matchup to the Bravo matchup that we've actually watched on stream before.
Yeah, here we have a Unhallowed Rites coming in with Go Again from Chane.
Grabbing the seeds that they played earlier. Sarah's putting that to the bottom of the deck.
Definitely want to set those seeds up for late game.
Yeah, especially red seeds. Red seeds the best card in the deck, most likely.
If you're Osvaldo in this situation, how much do you want to block out this Unhallowed Rites?
It's a really interesting back and forth, and this is an interesting play too. He's going to create a Spectral Shield to stop one of the points, to stop that arcane damage. Worried perhaps about cards like Rip Through Reality that just have the natural Go Again if you meet those requirements. Going to block with the Phantasmal Footsteps, and he had the resource left over to do so because he pitched a blue, paid 2, created the Spectral Shield, blocked the arcane, and then had the extra resource left over. It's a nice little line of play.
The Phantasmal Footsteps being quite nice to be able to block multiple times as long as they don't block an attack that's coming in for too much.
Coming in with the Nebula Blade for 4.
I love to see it.
Depends on what perspective you have, right? You either love or hate
Very
it.
true. I have a feeling we're going to see a lot of 4-attack Nebula Blades today.
Yes. So earlier during round 2, I was walking around the various matchups and just looking at the matchups as they were being played
blocking
out.
with the Celestial Cataclysm.
Indeed, very interesting. Not much in the way of soul being built up currently, so perhaps you don't worry too much about the Celestial Cataclysm possibly providing value later, as you haven't really connected too much. These games don't necessarily go super long. They can. This matchup can go a little bit longer if the Prism player chooses to play it out that way.
Still creating a Rune Chant off the back end of that attack. Oh, here we have another Pursuit of Knowledge.
Yeah.
Coming in for 4 with a quite strong on-hit effect like we talked about before. It's definitely a card you do not want to allow hit.
Yeah, and this is most likely the play where you take 1 card from hand. Oh,
ooh, lunging
what
press.
A powerful play. So what was happening here is that they were signaling the Arcanite Skullcap was going to block, and they were blocking for 4, but then we have the lunging press come over the top. Lunging press is an attack reaction. It's played in the reaction window after blocks have been declared, and it adds +1 attack. That makes the attack hit, and now the Prism player has 5-card hand.
That
Very
just one
dangerous
extra
thing.
damage
Very
allowed them
dangerous.
to draw another card.
Oh no. The Chane player banishes no cards they can play from the banish zone. They banished an Art of War, a Shadow Puppetry, and a blue Mavrian Skies.
That has got to be rough for Chane.
Doesn't feel good when that happens.
So now Chane is basically playing from their hand, and as a Chane player, that's not where you want to be, especially this late in the game.
Well, and also you'd really love to strip the cards out of the Prism player's hand because they are out on 5-card hand, and it looks like they still might be able to because they're playing Art of War from from Arsenal, giving the +1 and most likely the banish and draw 2. Looks like that is what we're getting. So they still could strip cards from the opponent's hand.
Banishing Ghostly Visit, which can be played from the Banish Zone.
This is very interesting.
Despite some bad Shackles triggers, it looks like Chane still has some gas here.
This is a great time to have a 5-card hand as a Prism
It was a
player. You
fantastic
go, okay,
time.
good. At least I have some ability to kind of control the situation if things get a little too crazy. Pitching a Blue Seeds, coming in with the Rune Chant plus the 4, plus the 1 from Art of War, and of course with Go Again from the Shackle. So coming across for 5 and a point of Arcane.
Definitely a decently threatening attack here with their opponent, down to 27.
Now, there's some very interesting, depending on what's in these 5 cards for the Prism player, there's some very interesting things that could occur. Because, again, if we see a Tome of Divinity in that hand, then at instant speed, the Prism player can destroy their headpiece and put a card into Soul, and then draw 3 cards off of Tome of Divinity. If they draw another Tome of Divinity, you know what they're going to do, right? They're going to draw 3 cards off that Tome of Divinity, and the game gets very exciting from that point. So it's interesting in this moment because we see that there's a threat, and we see now a Command and Conquer for just pure 7 damage because there's no arsenaled card. If the if the Prism player just decides to take it all, which it looks like that's what they did, this could signal that they're going to just have a crazy 5-card hand turn.
I smell a spicy hand.
We could also see something like, play down a great library of Solana and have constant 5-card hands as long as your hand doesn't get stripped. That would be fantastic. Oh, and looks like it is the turn. Here we go. Is it going to be Tome of Divinity? What card's going to go into Soul? A Herald of Rebirth, it looks like. Drawing a card off of the effect of the Halo of Illumination, and there it is.
Perfect
Tome of
call.
Divinity, drawing 3 cards off of the Tome of Divinity. And this is where you really want to see a second Tome of Divinity. Because if you see the second Tome of Divinity, you just go absolutely wild.
You're there. You're in magical Christmas land.
This could be it. Even if it's not, this is still going to be a fantastically crazy turn. Herald of Erudition's fantastic here. You have the resources to pay for the action point if they do happen to pop it. But we've seen, 2, 3, 6 attacks already gone?
Yeah. We've seen the Command and Conquers. We've seen the 9th Blade of the Blood Oath.
Mm-hmm.
Other than Herald of Erudition, what is the card that you want most as Prism here?
I know this is perhaps controversial. I love me a good Herald of Triumph because your opponent sees that card come down and they say, oh, I can't all of a sudden deal with that, and I'm sad. Oh, okay, so interesting. Pitching an Arclight Sentinel to play floating more resources, to play the Prismatic Shield, creating 3 Spectrals, and then you're just going to send the Spectrals at your opponent.
Yeah. They either take 1 damage or they strip cards out of their hand, and at this point in the game, you really can't afford to block those. So that's 3 damage coming on in.
And all these have Go Again, and he still has cards in hand.
Yeah.
Paying 2. Let's see what gets played. If they have an Erudition in hand, this is when you would want to consider the Dreamweavers into Erudition play.
Ooh.
Oh, wow. Okay, so setting up a very heavy aura setup here with the Merciful Retribution, which oftentimes you want to play on your opponent's turn as a trick or a trap.
Followed up by a Herald of Protection.
Herald of Protection, possibly threatening damage by its own attack. Possibly if it gets popped, it threatens damage from the newly played Merciful Retribution. Threatening an on-hit effect of creating another Spectral Shield. And this is a Husk moment. That is a Huskable card right there.
Huskable moment if I've ever seen one.
Passes over. So not as explosive as it could be, but still a very strong turn nonetheless.
Prism's still sitting here with 4 auras.
Yeah. Let's see what the banishes are.
Ooh, looking good so far.
Now those are some nasty banishes.
Double Riftbind and a Seeds of Agony. Quite good.
And also we have to keep in mind that the Husk is in Banish Zone, so it's going to start ticking down that life.
Every turn, 1 life. Chane does have a card in their arsenal. We could see a good string of cards here from Chane.
Oh my
perfect.
goodness. Another one.
Art of War.
This is 2 back-to-back turns for Art of War. It's easy to forget because the Art of War turn happened, and then we had the spicy Tome of Divinity into drawing a bunch of cards and all of that. But last turn was another Art of War, and we see the banish draw 2 and +1 to all attacks. Wow.
Chane is setting up for a very, very threatening turn.
Right now it's looking like a triple Riftbind turn. Not the most Riftbinds we've seen so far on
stream. Not quite 4 Riftbinds, but who knows? Who knows what Chane has in their hand?
The turn is still young, as they say.
As Prism, you just got to be dreading this. You see what they have in their banish zone. You see the Art of War.
And things are face up, too. We know that we have Snapdragon Scalers up. We know that we can make a Soul Shackle. And so in understanding all of that, we can see that all 3 of these Riftbinds are going to be played or could be played this turn. There are some tricks that Prism can do, of course. And there are some choices to be made on Chane's end of things, like do you respect popping the Merciful Retribution? What do you think in that scenario?
It could be the goal at the end of the turn, popping that Merciful Retribution. I think the real key thing here is just how many non-attack actions Chane can play to pump up those Riftbinds to get the maximum amount of damage they can. Because we only see just a single Seeds of Agony.
That's true. The +1 helps a ton, because technically it's as if you played a non-attack action card prior, thanks to Art of War, right? You're basically getting the +1 there. So you could argue that, you know, attacking for 5, 5, and 5, or 5, 5, and 6, something like that, is enough of a benefit to play all these Riftbinds out.
Oh yeah, I would say attacking for 16 is nothing to be sneezed at.
But how greedy do you really want to get? I mean, that's the question that we always ask. Do you want to wait on these Riftbinds, take some blood debt, and then just come at the opponent absolutely crazily next turn?
That's a really tricky thing, too. Do they want to give in to the greed and go for maximum damage now, or set up for even more damage in the future? The game is still young. 20 life versus 22.
Oh, goodness. Okay, now we have the Howl from Beyond red giving +3, most likely to one of these Riftbinds, but who knows? Depends on what's in the hand still.
And it's another non-attack action to pump up all of the Riftbinds.
That is a very powerful, oh my goodness.
And a Shadow Puppetry.
So now when you see a Shadow Puppetry come down, you know they don't have to use Snapdragons. So Snapdragons will survive another turn. And Riftbind for 1 billion.
Yeah, it's getting that +2 from the non-attack actions, +1 from Shadow Puppetry,
This is
+3.
a Riftbind for 10.
Yeah.
Just a tenner.
The first Riftbind.
Goodness gracious.
You see the other 2 just sitting there, like kind of taunting Prism, like threatening so much more damage.
This is an incredible Riftbind.
There's still seeds in the banish zone too.
That's true. We could have had a Seeds play into the Riftbind as well. But you also might want to spread that arcane damage, you know, later in the turn perhaps. We did see they pitched a blue meet and greet, so you're not threatening necessarily to play a meet and greet for Go Again because of the arcane.
Are floating 2 resources from that. Combined with Chane, that's easily another couple Riftbinds.
Yep, and I haven't mentioned it, but Time Snap Potion is also up, and because Time Snap Potion is also up, you're always threatening the possibility of gaining an action point. Looks like they're just going to take a bunch of damage, let those Spectral Shields pop, and in doing so, the Spectral Shields being destroyed allow damage to be dealt backwards, right?
Yeah.
Thanks to the Merciful Retribution, damage is being dealt. Oh, and the banish off the Shadow Puppetry hits a red Bounding Demagon.
Bounding Demagon.
This turn is getting crazy.
Easily one of the best cards you want to see off there. 0 cost attack from the banish zone. They have it and everything. All of the Go Again and action points.
And all on an Art of War turn. So here comes the Seeds. Most likely the Bounding, yep.
Bounding Demagon.
You know, for 5.
Yeah.
Bounding for 5.
It's a casual 5 with Go Again.
Costs nothing. Just play that out there.
And I do believe they activated Chane, creating a Soul Shackle to give this one Go Again.
Absolutely crazy. And they're going to continue attacking too. I guess the question for me is, at any point, do we stop attacking the hero? And do we start considering popping the Spectra on the Merciful Retribution? Most likely not, because this is the turn where you just try to push crazy amounts of damage.
Oh yeah, your opponent's down to 13 already. This is a really, really crucial turn, possibly the most crucial turn of this game.
Most definitely the most crucial turn. If you strip all of Prism's cards on this turn, things are going to snowball very quickly.
Getting an extra turn with those 5 Soul Shackles.
Yeah.
And like you said, there's still that potion on the board. We still have the Snapdragon Scalers. I feel like Sarah, the world is her oyster.
Calculating out damage. It looks like he's just going to start taking things. Looks like he's just going to start taking damage. He understands, Prism understands that if they lose their hand, then there's most likely no way coming back into this. They still do have a full grip of 4. Oh, and look, it looks like they have a Tome of Divinity in hand as well. So they perhaps are trying to set up a Tome of Divinity turn wherein they draw, 3 cards. Also, you just can't block with Tome of Divinity, so it makes things very difficult block-wise. Oh, going to take the 5, yep.
Down to 7. Coming in with another Riftbind. Quite powerful Riftbind at that, too.
Off the top of my head, I can think of the Seeds was played, the Howl from Beyond was played, so that's giving at least 2 more buffs.
Did we get another Seeds? Was it 2 Seeds played?
We might have had 2 Seeds played, so that could at least be +3, if so.
Definitely threatening go again from those Snapdragon Scalers.
Yeah. At the very least, we see attacking for 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6. And
it's almost lethal range.
Yeah, exactly. We're in the lethal range.
And we were talking about being greedy earlier. Like, as the Prism player, you're sitting here with a full grip. Like, at one point, do you really need to start blocking?
Well, it could be one of those scenarios where they just don't have cards that can block.
Like the Tome that you mentioned.
Right. I mean, if they're, and this has happened to me before. If you're playing a lot of auras, if you're playing, a lot of Spectral Shield generators, then you could end up with just a hand where you are stuck with cards in hand that don't block. And again, if you've mixed in cards, like off meta or things that you feel like target a specific matchup, those cards may not block for 3; they may block for 2. And so you could end up in this scenario with, like, for example, I think we see the yellow Plunder run.
Is that an Eye of Ophidia?
It could have been. It could have been an Eye of. If it is, then you have another card there that can't block. So this could literally just be one of those turns where you draw into no blocks. They play an Art of War, and the writing is on the wall at that point.
I definitely saw at least a Herald of Protection in their hand. Ooh, here we go. The Snapdragon Scalers going all in.
No blocks. If this was for 6,
down
they're
to
at
1.
1, yeah. And coming in for 6.
The third Riftbind. Does Prism even have enough cards to survive this? They can still use their boots to block at least a little bit of damage.
Vestige blocks for 1.
Vestige blocks for 1.
That allows you to pitch and do things.
Unfortunately, their gloves provide no defense.
No. Wartune Herald there in hand blocks for 3. But at this point, those denominations of 6 plus those cards that can't block may end up doing it. You could always create a Spectral Shield. Pitch, drop the card from Soul, create a Spectral Shield. I mean, your only line, perhaps it looks like, is pitch a card that can't block with the Vestige, which is free, and then block with the Phantasmal Footsteps, which cost 1. Use the remaining 2, perhaps, to create a Spectral Shield, and then throw down the 1 card from your hand that can block.
This is a turn where you have to do what you got to do.
They just chose to block 6. They have a hand that just can't really do much, but you're at 1. It's a very tough moment as a Prism player. Arsenaling a card, popping on over.
That's the real downside of cards like these auras that are instants and these tomes that don't have any defense on them.
Taking 2 blood debt, most likely. but it doesn't look like that's going to be too big of a deal at this point. It is very difficult to be at 1 against Chane that can create
tough spot.
That can create arcane damage. Yeah.
And Chane is still sitting there with that potion, right on board.
At this point, it's all down to 1 point of arcane damage wins the game. So a hit trigger on a Nebula Blade wins the game. I mean, obviously just hitting with a Nebula Blade wins the game.
Here we have a Spectral Shield token being generated from Soul.
Attacking for 2, because again, the Merciful Retribution itself is an aura that can attack on your turn, thanks to Luminaris.
And
attacking for 2.
They can attack with these because of the Luminaris, correct?
Yes, you can attack with it because Luminaris and because they have Go Again because you pitched a yellow Plunder run and because they're both give and go again.
Looks like they just arsenaled up, drew, and passed turn.
Look at this, banishing a bunch of playable cards, it looks like.
Yeah, it's difficult to see what they all are, but it looks like there's some gas there.
You can at least see a Seeds here on top, down there at the bottom, very close to the bottom of the screen. And that plus 4 cards in hand, it is, I think it's next to impossible to survive this turn.
Card in arsenal, 4 cards in hand. Here we have a Seeds.
It's a Seeds plus an attack, right?
Another Seeds. How many Seeds do we have coming in?
Just in case you Soul Shackle up and you throw that over there.
Bounding
Demagogue. You look over and you realize that Spell Void 2 on the Halo of Illumination is gone. The only way they can block Arcane is if they create Spectral Shields. They don't have a card in Soul to do so.
You have 1 Spectral Shield.
You do have the 1.
It's really down to it. The end here.
Throwing the whole thing and shaking it. Yep.
Chane taking it.
Chane takes it with the point of Arcane. It's definitely one of those matchups that could have gone much differently had we seen an even crazier turn for Prism. Unfortunately, hitting the draws into a Spectral Shields generator is not what you want to see on that turn. You want to go into that turn, pop off, Tome of Divinity again. Dome of Divinity again.
Yeah, never seeing any of those Heralds. Heralds of Erudition is pretty rough.
0 Heralds of Erudition made that a very tough matchup going into it. Not much that could have happened there after that. Kind of a whiff of a turn when it came to Tome of Divinity. But nevertheless, a really fun game to watch and a moment that could have been even crazier than it already was.
I agree.
Yep. Well, that takes us to the end of round 3 and moves us into round 4. So after a quick break, we're going to join us again for some more action here at the Calling Las Vegas.
Stick around.